Thanks for that introduction, Jake. So today I'm going to be talking to you about some work we've been doing at the USGS, looking at modeling and forecasting. Hopefully, the hope in the future is to be able to forecast restoration outcomes across arid ecosystems in the western U.S. And so this is really motivated by this need to better understand how ecosystems are responding to drought and disturbance. And so what we've seen across a lot of the western U.S. is that disturbance has caused widespread transformations of ecosystems on scales that are relevant for managers. And so this is a ponderosa pine forest just outside of Flagstaff. And in 20 years after this fire has occurred, there's been very little recruitment of new individuals of ponderosa pine into this population. And so as far as managers are concerned, this is an ecosystem that's basically transformed, that's providing very different ecosystem services than it would have been before. And in this instance, there hasn't really been that much active management to try to bring back ponderosa pine, but many federal agencies, like the Bureau of Land Management, actually have mandates that dictate that they must take certain actions to try to restore ecosystems. And this is really common, for example, north of here in the Great Basin, where the loss of sagebrush and associated species with that is a really big concern. And so, just as an example of that, this is a picture from the Milford Flat Fire, which was the largest fire in the history of Utah. And basically, because this fire occurred during a relatively dry period, the seeding techniques that were used weren't very effective in bringing back vegetation. It's very obvious. And it was in some ways exacerbated by the restoration itself, which made conditions worse. And so what happens is there's basically a loss of vital ecosystem services that this area provides, and in some ways this degradation makes conditions worse by degrading water quality. So there's really important economic impacts of trying to get restoration right. And in addition to sort of the indirect costs through ecosystem services, there's really big direct costs associated with this because these agencies are mandated to do these activities. And so the area that's being seeded by helicopters, tractors, airplanes across the western U.S. to try to restore these ecosystems is really rapidly increasing. And so this is just a time series along the bottom of the last 60 years of the amount of area that's been seeded in the Great Basin with various native plants and non-native plants, depending on the era that it was occurring. And the big takeaway I just want to point out is 300 on the x-axis there is 300,000 hectares, which is about the size of the state of Rhode Island. So in a single year, their seeding area is equivalent to Rhode Island, and this is happening many, many years, depending on the sort of extent of fires occurring. And the cost of doing this restoration is increasing over time. It's becoming more expensive to do it. And so there's really big economic imperative to try to improve these forecasts. And so some of the work that we've been doing at the USGS is first trying to do retrospective analysis. Restoration's been going on for 50 or 60 years in many of these ecosystems and trying to understand, using data that's already available, what's sort of driving these outcomes. And so one way we've been doing that is these retrospective analyses, looking at how environmental conditions at the time of seeding influence outcomes. And so, for example, in this case, we found that the establishment of sagebrush after disturbance in this restoration seeding was most closely associated with cool spring and winter temperatures, high snowpack, and associated spring soil moisture, but not so much precipitation. And so our goal is ultimately to build this into a predictive framework where we've been working on models that predict the population recovery of sagebrush and other species after disturbance, and then have these be driven by near-term weather predictions that come from NOAA and other agencies. But really the big bottleneck that we still face is that we don't have really good monitoring data to sort of improve these forecasts. It's really difficult when you have these really large scales to get effective monitoring data. So we're really excited about the possibility of having data from sources like LiDAR and other remote sensing sources that could help us really improve these models and forecasts. And then ultimately the goal is not just to be able to predict the outcomes of restoration, but actually improve them. And so building in adaptive techniques and adjustments that can be done by managers to improve restoration, or for example, how you can sort of adjust the time to improve outcomes. And that's all I have. Thank you.